Do we still trust the 49ers, or did the clock strike midnight on one Brock Purdy?
I am not fading Brock Purdy after one bad game. Am I saying he's one of the great quarterbacks in the NFL? No, I am not. I feel like Brock Purdy detractors have been waiting for this game since he started last year. Every week, oh, he sucks. 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 Just waiting. And he hasn't had a bad game, and he finally had a bad game. And he had a bad game against arguably the best team in football. One of those interceptions was tipped, not his fault. Doesn't matter. He had a bad game. End of story. How many great games has he had? A ton. No credit for those. So I am not going to base my evaluation of Brock Purdy on a single game. If he starts to falter down the stretch, okay, we can have a conversation. But if he were so easily replaceable, then why didn't the Niners just stick in a quarterback last year in the NFC Championship game and keep on rolling? They didn't. When Brock Purdy was out of that game, they had nothing. It was over. And you know who knew it was over? We all did. So both things can't be true. Oh, this thing is over now because Brock Purdy is out of the game, and also Brock Purdy sucks. You can't reconcile those two thoughts. They don't make sense. So I believe that he is not a top-tier quarterback. He is a very good quarterback, and he's good enough to win a Super Bowl with the Niners. Ravens got the best of the Niners. There's no shame in that. It happens. Full credit to Baltimore. But I'm not fading Brock Purdy because he had one bad game. It happens to every. Look at Patrick Mahomes. If we're doing a one-game sample size, Patrick Mahomes sucks. Patrick Mahomes sucks. He sucks. He's terrible. He gave up 2 defensive touchdowns to the Raiders in 7 seconds. Brock Purdy didn't do that. So if that's your standard, apply it across the board. He's going to be fine.
This is my point exactly. I thought this game was a great thermometer for some people who are always overreacting to things. Because doesn't that feel like that is the nature of the NFL? People overreact so much week to week. Just look at the trajectory of guys like Josh Allen. Like 1 week he's the MVP. The other week is like, oh my God, this guy turns the ball over in 5 seconds. But this is the same deal for Brock Purdy. Are we going to look at one game against probably the best team in the AFC and say, okay, well, it's time to just throw him back into irrelevance now. You know, this is why he was drafted or not drafted or drafted last, excuse me. So yes, it is a 1-game sample size, and I feel like you probably shouldn't overreact too much. But I think the problem was it wasn't just a bad game. It was a really bad game. Like 4 interceptions is not great any way you slice it. So I think that's the other thing is I think you could still argue for him to be the MVP if it was only 2 picks, but 4, you're out of the conversation because he did not have the narrative going his way in the first place. Because I think you bring up a great point. Like, imagine this was Aaron Rodgers in his prime. If he had one game where he threw 4 picks, he would probably be all right. But since the narrative is so heavily against Brock Purdy, one bad game is all that's going to take to get him out of this conversation. We see that reflected in the odds. So I think the Niners are just fine. They have, been there, done that before, even with worse quarterbacks. Jimmy Garoppolo went to Lambeau Field and won despite throwing multiple interceptions with this Niners team that I would say is even better this year. So I think the Niners are fine. Brock Purdy is still a good quarterback as well. So let me ask you, when a team is missing their starting quarterback, how much more willing are you to play the other side? Because clearly the quarterback is a huge position in football, and especially somebody who is an entrenched veteran who has been taking all the first team snaps for quite some time. But there are some schools that have, some guys waiting in the wings that may be good. Yeah. Do you think this is the juncture where you say, okay, this is an offense that I don't really want to trust?
I think so. I think there's 2 prongs here. Number one is, who is the backup? How much experience do they have? Are they a transfer quarterback? Have they gotten some snaps before? Are they a highly touted recruit? Or is it someone who has taken, like that Syracuse quarterback is a perfect example, right? He threw 1 pass. It was for -6 yards. I thought that's not great. But then also, what sort of offense is this team running? I like Tulane here. I know they lost Willie Fritz to Houston, but this is a team that loves to run the football. So even if you're talking about a quarterback who isn't a starter here, then you're talking about an offense. Yes, you want to be able to have a balanced offense, hopefully, so the defense can't key on the running game. But overall, this is a team that wants to run the ball. And also, Chelsa, is Virginia Tech 10.5 points better than anyone? Tulane? I'm not quite so sure they are. And when you're talking about a bowl game, double-digit spreads are precarious.
I think that is the bottom line for me. I think after watching a lot of these bowl games, I don't really want to lay 10.5 points with anybody. In fact, I think it makes me want to lean towards the underdogs even more, because just from a strategy standpoint, if you think there's chaos abound when it comes to these bowl games, wouldn't you just take the points? Especially, if you have a team that, yes, Virginia Tech just beat up on Virginia, but that was a Virginia team kind of hobbling to the finish when it came to the season. And also, you look at Tulane. They have not ended the season on a great stretch, but I do think that loss to SMU, I think SMU is better than people are giving them credit for.
Yes.
So I'm gonna put an asterisk by that loss and say, okay, SMU is actually pretty solid. Maybe Tulane is not that bad. And then you are getting 10.5 points, which is the bottom line. In a game with 44 total points, I don't want to lay 10.5 points. So I would lean towards the side of Tulane, even though it doesn't make me feel great that their head coach, who is not just a head coach, but somebody who's been a fixture at Tulane, and also their leader in passing yards, is going to be gone for this one. So I don't feel good about it, but I would lean toward Tulane.
I cannot believe the Suns are 8-1. That's ridiculous to me. We are already hearing that Kevin Durant is unhappy with the way things are going. I don't know if you saw that video of Devin Booker yelling at some dude who was signed to a 1-year contract because the guy made a bad pass and it's intercepted. So Devin Booker is running back to try and guard the guy who gets a layup, and he looks at this guy, I don't know who this player was, and he goes, "You're not even going to run back?" You throw the hot mic on, I think it was ESPN's NBA coverage, caught him yelling at a guy going, "You're not going to run back? You threw a turnover, and you're not even going to run back on defense?" I mean, this is a team where KD's unhappy, Devin Booker is unhappy. They have no bench because they gave away everyone to bring in this big three. Bradley Beal isn't even playing. So at 8-1, even if Bradley Beal plays, this is a team with no depth. I cannot believe the Suns are only 8-1. That's my spiel on Phoenix. Stay away from them. I still like Milwaukee right now at plus 450, and we're seeing them. Milwaukee, I think, has the highest ceiling of any team because I think they can get even better with Dame in that lineup. I don't trust Boston at plus 375. Maybe the Nuggets, can they do it again? It's hard to repeat again, but ultimately, I'm staying away from Boston. I need to see them galvanize in the postseason. I haven't seen that, so I guess I would lean Bucks.
I think the Bucks, the question is, how much do you think depth matters and how much do you think defense matters? Because right now the Bucks don't have a lot of either. Because we know they traded away a lot of their depth pieces for Damian Lillard. This year, defense has not been their calling card. But let me ask this, because I was talking about this with my husband, and he said this. He said, okay, well, they're not playing defense now. Don't you think they'll turn it on in the NBA Finals? Do you think this is a salient point? Do you think once the clock strikes the postseason that the Bucks will turn it on defensively speaking?